So, as a writer, I look at a lot of the stories that I admire for my inspiration and some ideas on how I can improve my writing in general. And one of the main things I look at is, oddly enough, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, even though I know it's not one of the best written things throughout its whole run. I understand that it has a few really good concepts that it does really well, and I'm going to touch on one of them today, and that's specific to JoJolion, and that is villain groups. JoJolion loves to use villain groups. In the beginning, it is the villain group that the Higashikata family. In the middle, it's the Domo group. And in the end, or what seemingly is the end, it is the hospital staff and the hospital group. So we have three distinct eras of JoJolion to look at and discuss why it is that the villain groups work so well for this story and could work so well for your story too. First, I want to start off with the Higashikata family. Now, in the Higashikata family, Josuke and the other members of the main cast fight one, Daya, Tsurugi, Kei. Yeah, all of those are early fights that establish what the power system is, what stands are, and basically how Gappy will fight and who Gappy is as a person. I'll be using Josuke and Gappy interchangeably in this video if you didn't know. So, there's one villain group, and this villain group isn't necessarily like a villain group. This is just a group of antagonists that oppose Gappy or Josuke in one way or another. And this is really the showcase group that is meant to get you acquainted with the power system and the world. And then we move on to the Rokakaka dealer group, and that is Domo, Sectivit. We start off with a little team up between Norisuke and Josuke for the King Nothing versus I'm a Rock. That is a little team up that perfectly segues, because off the heels of the Paper Moon King fight, we go right into the second group, which basically makes it a seamless transition. It doesn't feel like they come out of nowhere later on, because it's immediately into the action. It's out of the pan into the fire, basically. And from there, the stakes rise as immediately we kill one of the villain group's members. And it's interesting that they do that immediately. Araki establishes the expectations immediately. Basically, he says Josuke is a guy who can forgive enemies, but these guys need to be taken out because they are bad. They are bad news all around. They will stop at nothing to get what they want. They are inhuman monsters, basically, is what he's presenting them as. Which is interesting now looking at where we are in the story with Toru. It's interesting. And then we go on to fight a few more of the group, and that includes taking out basically all the foot soldiers. And then we meet in the Vitamin C arc, we meet Domo Tamaki, who turns out he is actually there for revenge in retaliation for the murders of his group, which is another good way of building tension and suspense. It uses the group structure to present kind of a boss, which is then immediately uprooted by Jobin knowing the boss of what we thought was the big bad villain group, and presenting them as just a middleman to a larger, more evil organization of rock humans that is the hospital group, seemingly led by Toru as of right now. And Jobin, knowing the top guy from that little sect of the Rokakaka business and the Rokakaka trade, really clues us in that Jobin is a threat to be watched and monitored, which is, now that I'm saying it out loud, it does make a good case for him being some sort of villain, and he clearly is, because he is directly opposing the protagonist's needs and goals, both in the protagonist's group in general, with him trying to kill and harm Yasuo multiple times in the story, but he also needs the new Rokakaka for his own nefarious goals, and by nefarious, I mean personal and greedy and selfish goals. Because now that we move on to the hospital is the most ruthless group we've seen yet. Jobin meets with Poor Tom, and Poor Tom is really good. Ozone Baby is a really tense fight, one of my favorites in the whole series. And it turns out that they just come up, they roll up, and they murder him. And they didn't even get what they were looking for. They killed a friend. They lost a comrade. So this is a totally different group. We immediately established that there's different stakes here. They're not just out to get you. They will kill each other too, if that means saving their asses. So now we have an immediate rise in tension. When Poor Tom is assassinated, there is an immediate and sudden just rise in tension throughout all characters. Basically, all characters are vulnerable right now, and that especially sticks in the current Endless Calamity arc, where Raimon Mizuku and Jobin Higashikata have seemingly died, like permanently died, which I hope isn't the case, but oh man, Momozuku's so dead, it's not even funny anymore. It's not even like sad, it's just he's dead. He's a body laying on the floor. Anyways, I'll save that for my chapter reviews. But how JoJolion uses the groups is it increases the stakes every time a new group is introduced. Higashikata's the introductory, and the Higashikatas are the introductory group. The dealers and the street level guys are the intermediate, and then the hospital is like basically each fight is almost like final bosses. Everyone gets injured like pretty badly during each of the hospital fights, while you look at the street level guys and no one really gets injured that heavily during those fights, which is super interesting if you look at it. But structurally, they also serve to push Josuke farther and farther and to test his limits and his morals. Because my favorite showing of this is currently Blue Hawaii, and Blue Hawaii is a weird one because Dolomite is not directly associated with either group. He's kind of an in-between, an independent party that Jobin hires, but we know that Jobin is associated with both groups. He's an in-between man of both groups. So Josuke is really tested, and he has to do some heinous acts when he's being pursued by the Blue Hawaii virus, the Blue Hawaii stand. He has to do some heinous things, and it really puts him to the test. And that is what the second group is supposed to do. It's to really put his life in danger and to really test him. And Dolomite is the perfect bridge to bridge the gap between them, because immediately we jump into the Ozone Baby fight, and that's immediately like life-threatening stakes, like you could easily die at any time. And that goes also for Urban Gorilla and Brainstorm, and that also goes for Wu. Dr. Wu's a little less, but he can definitely still kill you easily, as he's literally like gravel that can atomically manipulate his cells to go into you, and then he could basically explode you at any time, but he doesn't. So that's interesting to note. And then another thing is that no one's life has ever been in more danger than in the Endless Calamity arc and in the Wonder of You arc. That is supremely dangerous. Toru is one of the most dangerous villains we've ever seen in this series. And if Diavolo, his stand is what makes him dangerous. Dio is dangerous as a person, Cars, but this rock human can basically beat almost any of them, because you need to be a special breed of someone to not be able to attack and fight. It's just insane how they use them. Anyways, I hope you guys got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you guys watching it. Hopefully you watched to the end. I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to leave a like and maybe even subscribe to the channel. And yeah, peace.